Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology. Today, I'm honored to be joined by world-renowned astrologer, author, and lecturer, Öner Döşer. So thank you so much for joining us today, and how are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm very fine, and I see that you are very fine as well. You're doing something great. I'm very happy of that.
Thank you, Öner. I was saying to Öner before the recording, my gratitude to him. He was one of my first guests in the Let's Talk Astrology series. So my gratitude for Öner for helping me develop this series 4 years ago. So thank you so much. So in
Pleasure.
today's episode, we're talking about determining significators through medieval astrology, whether we're talking about the matters of career, finance, relationships, and so on, which is a slightly different approach from the modern psychological approach of looking at a natal chart. And even the modern significators, where we're looking at, for example, career, the 10th house, the ruler of the 10th house, planets in the 10th house, and matters along those lines. So I'll let you introduce.
Thank you. Actually, these significators in a natal chart do not only signify the native's characteristics and his psychological profile. Within the chart, there are many significators that signifies the native's health, money, profession, children, other people in his life, and many other things. So the significators which are crucial in reading a chart help us to make more precise and detailed predictions regarding the native's life. The issues that attract the attention of the contemporary astrologers seem to differ from those of the ancient astrologers, actually. The greatest difference of medieval astrology from today's astrology is that the planets in a chart are not only attributed to the native, but also to the other people that are signified through these planets. Medieval astrology is based on distinguishing and determining the planets which signify different issues. And, I'm particularly specialized in medieval astrology category of this art through the references given my dear teacher, peace be upon him, Master Robert Zoller. And I aim to introduce the rules and techniques used by ancient astrologers while determining some important significators in natal charts. For finding the significator, the most important one, we will see, or we are able to see, some methods suggested by the ancient astrologers, beginning from Claudius Ptolemy from the classical period to William Lilly, a late Renaissance astrologer. Then we can find out our own method through a synthesis of what we learned from the ancients. And we want to find out the main significator for the topic at the hand, for finding the possible significators and choosing the strongest of them. So I will share my screen now. So there are actually three kind of significators. One of them is universal significators that are the significators in general, such as the sun as a famous person, or how we manage the things, our determining something and managing abilities, or Venus, for example, for our love life, we can say one-to-one relationships, but also what we like in our life in general. So these are the universal significators. In medieval astrology, actually, Venus is not the significator of money, which is Jupiter, one of the differences from modern astrology. And as one of the accidental significators, I mean, the significators are three parts. One of them is universal significators, the other one is accidental significators, and the other one is specific technique significators. Accidental significators are the ones that are unique to the natal figure we are reading, and they are determined by the house position and the rulership of the planets. In a horary chart, for example, one of the most important things is to determine the significator and the house, which represent the Karen and the Kezadin. This is different than natural significators because natural significators or universal significators are the planets which naturally indicate or rule the relevant topic or person through their very nature. They always signify a thing or a person. So the planets, as we know, produce their effects simply by their essential natures, qualities, and correspondences. And lastly, specific technique significators. They are used for identifying the significators of important things in the native's life, such as marriage or sexual life, children, profession, finances, health matters, spiritual life, etc. So actually, this is one of the most important because this is not only by using universal significators or accidental significators. This is done additionally by looking at some specific significators. For example, for a native's profession, we look at the positioning of Mercury, Venus, and Mars. These are universal significators of profession. Of course, in medieval astrology or in any branch of traditional astrology, we use Sun, Moon, and 5 planets. But Saturn and Jupiter are not the main professional significators, but Mercury, Mars, and Venus. Why? Because Jupiter mostly indicates religious person or religious places. And in old times, in ancient times, this is not like a profession. This is not something to make money. Maybe in our time we can say something like that, but in traditional times it was not. And Saturn was the main significator of farmers. And this was something a person make coming from his or her family. But Mercury was the main significator of scribes. Venus was the main significator of artisan, and Mars, the main significator of someone who is related with army, the guns in general, that sort of things. So this is martial kind of profession. This indicate martial kind of professions.
So, for example, in terms of career, the medieval astrologers are looking at the personal planets. We've got Venus, we've got Mercury and the Mars, and you say that Jupiter is a social planet. It wasn't really considered in terms of career, for example.
Yes, it was so in medieval astrology. Of course, when we are, determining the main significators, of course, we can choose Jupiter or Saturn as well. But why they were not preferred by the ancient astrologers? Because they were social planets, as you said, and they were indicators of what comes from our family ancestors, which is Saturn and Jupiter in general, some religious person, religious life. But Mercury, for example, also was one of the significators of astrologers, mathematicians in general, someone who were writing books, for example, like Schrader. And Venus is one of the significators of artisans, as I said, and art kind of things. So these were more natural professions of medieval times. So these were preferred when determining the professional significators. Of course, when they are in one of the angular houses in a chart, the 1st, the 10th, the 7th, or the 4th, as well as if they are oriental to the sun. Oriental to the sun means for Mercury and Venus actually being after the sun, according to medieval astrology, not astronomically a orientality, a planet before the sun, born before the sun. It's not just like that. For Venus and Mercury, as Robert Zoller told, these are oriental or powerful when they are heading away from the sun. That means when they are behind the sun or when they born after the sun. And for Mars, of course, to be oriental means before the sun. And their aspects are very important. And not only these, when you determine a professional significators, also you look at that planet's aspect. So let's say you find out Mercury as professional significator very powerfully placed in a chart, but Mercury is not alone. For example, Mercury aspects to the moon, Mercury in conjunction with Venus or trine to Jupiter. So you are getting together these two planets and professions of these planets. Actually, you are using them together. When we look at the Ptolemy's tetrabiblos, for example, we see that he collects the planets together. For example, Mercury, Venus, and Saturn together. What kind of profession they give? If Mercury is the main significator, when Mercury is in conjunction with Venus, trine to Saturn, what does that mean? That means, for example, someone who teaches some artistic kind of things and who made something related to that art, who produced something which may be indicated by Saturn in a chart. And for finance, not only the second house, we look at the Jupiter's placement in a chart according to Bonatti's information, for example, who collected the information from the ancient Arabic astrologers or who were writing in Arabic, not only Arabs, they were also Persian, as well as some of the Hellenistic astrologers, but Persian or Jewish people or real Arab people who were writing in their books that Jupiter is one of the main indicators of finance. And of course, second house, a planet placed in the second house or a planet rules the second house, but also part of fortune and part of substance were the other significators. So you look at the chart and try to find out which is stronger than the others, not afflicted by the malefics, for example, not in conjunction with south node, for example, or preferred not to be combust, for example. And for
So it sounds
marriage,
like you're saying that the importance of synthesis. The ancients, the medieval astrologers are not just looking at the planets in isolation, but their relationships to one another by aspect. You've got the parts in here, part of fortune, part of substance. So it's a full delineation and a full analysis of the full chart.
that's true. Actually, we enlarge our perspective. We are looking more in detail, not only the second house, not only the planets placed in the second house, but also some Arabic parts. For example, maybe in our modern times, we are also using the power of fortune, but most of the astrologers are not aware of power of substance, which is very valuable Arabic part to understand the natives' finances or financial potentials, actually. So we are determining the strongest significator, actually, and we are choosing it. And what about marriage? Of course, we know that Venus is related with marriage as well as the seventh house. But in a female chart, we look at the positioning of the sun's aspect with the other planets, and whether the sun is placed in a mutable sign, fixed sign, or a cardinal sign, which gives us clues of the female natives' marriages. Will she marry only one or twice or maybe more? And of course, in a male chart, we look at the positioning of the moon and the part of marriage. These are very important. Of course, if there is an aspect between sun and moon, This gives information about the native's not only marriage, but also his relationship with the other gender. And what about children? What do we use in general? We use the fifth house in our modern times, but in medieval astrology, it was not only fifth house, first house, 11th house, 10th house, seventh house, and then fifth house. So we have to check actually the angular houses, exceptional of this, the fourth, and of course the fifth house. If we have planets who gives children, we are talking about fertility in general, like Moon, Venus, they are fertile planets. But Saturn, Mars, and the Sun are sterile. They don't give children in general. Sun, because it combusts, actually. In our modern times, we are using the fifth house for children, but we are equalizing it with Leo, because Leo is the fifth sign. But it is the opposite in the medieval astrology because Leo is one of the sterile signs. So it's one of the sciences that don't give children, which is one of the most important differences of medieval astrology with our today's mundane astrology. And if you want to get good results, yes, you will check all the details and be sure that you will find out the best possible results. And in a woman chart, you look at the positioning of the moon, but in a male chart, to understand the potential to produce a child, you check the positioning of Mars. And also Venus and Jupiter, because they are the most fertile planets, if they are afflicted in a chart to give a children or some children. For the spirituality, mostly we are thinking about the 12th house. We are, in our today's astrologers, we are saying that the 12th house is related with spirituality because the 12th sign is Pisces and its ruler Neptune in general indicates the spirituality. But it was not true for the medieval astrology. It was not in 11th house. It was not the 12th house, sorry. It was the 9th house. And Jupiter was not the main significator of the 9th house, actually. Jupiter joys in the 11th. This is another topic, which one of the most important differences of medieval astrology, again, our today's astrology. By the way, we don't show our today's astrology into out. Actually, we are trying to blend the medievals and moderns rules actually to get the best result. So Mercury, the planet of intentions, the planet of our mind, where our mind is focused, mostly was related with spirituality and more than that, religious ideas, which is again different than today's understanding. And part of spirit, part of soul, the other name of this part, and pars halak, part of halak or part of incarnation were calculated in a chart to understand the spiritual or religious life of the native. In ancient times, spirituality and religion were not so separated from each other as well as the sign. They were combined. And the 9th house plus one of the most important to check in a chart, almutan figuris. This is not house cusps almutans. This is another planet which is determined by some calculations. This is just like an entity in a chart, just like a guardian angel which whispers something into our subconscious mind. This is, in itself another topic which I like to speak actually for many hours. I can speak about that. And I wrote a book on this mystical astrology, which was mostly related on this topic. But Almutan Figuris is the key of the native's chart. And for health matters, for health problems, Actually, we start with the ascendant. If the ascendant is afflicted by some of the malefics, by conjunction, opposition, or squares by the malefics, because the ascendant indicates health. The sixth house indicates health problems or sicknesses, illnesses. And the moon is one of the main significators to check when we are talking about our health or health problems. And the sixth house, actually also the 12th, part of sickness, but also the malefics, where they are placed, especially their sign placement, is important to determine what part of the body in the native's body will be afflicted, actually, to understand that, because malefics afflicts. And lastly, about life, we look at Hilak and Alkokadan. Hilak is not part of Hilak. This is determined from the sun, the moon, ascendant, and part of fortune. Interestingly, part of fortune is used to determine the hilak, not only some fortune of the native, some material fortunes. This is very important part because this is calculated by the sun, moon, and the ascendant. So it is very related with life. And the Alkakodan, which is indicated as a giver of life, how many years the native will have. So you have to check them all. Very important. And of course, when you um, put them in a chart, you see the big picture. But let's talk about some of them. This is Robert Zoller's chart, and he was using Alcabitus houses in his courses, as well as whole sign houses in the background. He was always suggesting to see or to determine the significators using by whole sign houses as well. So mainly we use Alcabitus houses, but in the background we look whole sign houses. And when we look at the part of soul in this chart, we see that it's in conjunction with Mercury, which is placed in the 11th house, 12th sign. I'm always using like this 11th house, but the 12th sign. So I blend, that means I will blend 11th and 12th house mirrors. So what could it be? Part of soul. Part of soul indicates something that a person puts over his head. What is the most important thing for him? And what God means for him. It's not part of religion, but what God means for him. What is the most important? What is the most valuable thing for him? So when we see Mercury here and Aquarius, we see that this was knowledge, information, calculation, interpreting something, or learning, teaching kind of things. This was very true for Robert Zoller. He was a teacher of astrology as well as student always. As William Liddy said, student of astrology. We are always students of astrology, actually, until we die, although we are teachers. So he was a writer, and also he was also giving some lectures in all the United States as well as the other countries. And what about Parsilak, part of Heart Hilek? It falls to the second house as well as part of fortune. They are very close to each other in a cardinal sign, Aries, cardinal fiery sign. What does that mean? He should be a man who were the first for something and who will make money, being the first or the brave who gets risk. He was the primary when we are talking about medieval astrology. He was the first man who translated something, some scripts from John Baptist Morin's book, Astrologia Gallica, as well as Bonatti's Liber Astronomia, and he taught them. he wrote about them. And also he was awarded with Regulus Awards in UAC, actually. So he was primary, he was the first man. So of course he made some money of this. And when we check the ruler of the part, Mars, again in the 11th house with two other planets, but combust. So there could be some problems relating to it. Combustion is one of the most important afflictions in medieval astrology. And Mars is not only afflicted by being close to the sun, being combust, also opposing to Saturn. So Mars's positioning is not very good, actually. So there could be some problems relating with friends in general and partnership with friends because Saturn, the ruler of the 11th house, falls to the 5th house, which is the 7th from the 11th. So in medieval astrology, we use derived houses, which is very important. So friends and their partnerships, partnership with friends. And also we see that ruler of the 7th house, Mercury, falls also to 11th house, which is again indicate that he will have some partnerships with his friends. But monetarily, it was not a good idea actually, because Mars was the 2nd house. And the sun was the exalted ruler of the 2nd house. This is also important. In medieval astrology, we don't only use the main rulers, we use the exaltation rulers as well. Of course, not only that, triplicity rulers to determine something. So,
to your point before about if you go back to that previous chart, do you always
yeah.
explain to the students the importance of looking at multiple house systems? With Robert Zoller there, we've seen the activity in the 11th, but we've got the whole sign 12th. Of course,
Yeah.
his incredible amount of work, Mercury, all the work he did for the astrology community, but I believe he spent a lot of time in isolation as well. Is that correct? So the importance of blending house systems and looking at the significators, the mutual reception with the Sun, the Saturn, the Mars, the outer set malefic, combust, conjunct the Sun. So as you're saying before, synthesizing the whole chart and pulling all the pieces together.
Bravo. As always, very wise. Thank you very much for your comments. That's true. Um, Isolation as well as some health problems were related with Mercury, especially Mercury's opposition with Saturn. Saturn, Sun opposition, Saturn, Mercury opposition, Mars opposition. He had Parkinson's disease
Ah,
beginning from 1999. And yes, he isolated himself to write or to prepare or medieval astrology courses and his books, but also he had some problems relating with those significators. So you are very right. Also 12th house, 11th house, the combination of them. And also it is good idea to use the fixed stars, which I'm using actually. For example, Mars in conjunction with Altair, as you see in the table of fixed stars. So Altair also is one of the most important fixed stars relating with to be brave, to be the first, to be a warrior, actually. And with Mars, a warrior kind of significator. Yeah, he was a warrior of in branch of astrology. Actually, he was, you know, fighting to tell people about the value of the ancient astrology. Actually,
wonderful.
and wonderful, thank you. And what about the calculation, the length of life? This was also important to find out some signatures in a chart. When calculating the length of life, you should find first Hilek and then the Almutan of Hilek, one of the Almutans, one of the rulers of Hilek, who is aspecting to it, Alkakadan. So you find out that planet, and according to its placement in a chart, and according to its aspect with benefics, malefics, etc., you determine or you're trying to understand in general view of the chart, the length of a person's life. And another table, which we call Almutan table, Robert Zoller was using actually for determining the killing planet, for example. This is from the Robert Zoller's Tools and Techniques. And this is the calculation of Lady Diana's chart. And he found out that Saturn was the killing planet of that chart. So this is, again, one of the valuable significators to find out in a chart. And you see that those are only in traditional astrology, mostly in medieval astrology, which we don't much use in today's astrology. And also Almutan table for marriage, which planet indicates marriage in a chart. For example, in Robert Zoller's chart, the seventh house ruler is Mercury, because he has Virgo in the seventh house class. But when we make a calculation, Almutan table for marriage, we find out that Jupiter is that planet. So it can be a planet different than the seventh house ruler, which we use something related to marriage. These are coming from Abu Ali al-Hayat, and in later years, Ömer Tiberiades, and in later years, Abu Ali al-Hayat. They are almost in the same part of life, but I think from the 9th century, as I remember, Omar is before of Ali. So they gave some criteria, and when we put on the table, we find out that Jupiter is the Almutan of marriage. So we have to check the conditioning of Jupiter in Robert Zoller's to understand about his marriage. So when we look his chart, actually, Jupiter placed in the 9th house, and he was married with Diana, who was a Canadian astrologer, actually, who lives abroad. And Robert Zoller moved to Canada for a while. When I met her, he was in Vancouver, actually. It was 2004. I visited him to attend his mundane astrology intensive courses. I was with him for a week, and I learned many things from him, actually. And Diana invited me to her house to get a dinner together. On that night, although they don't have my chart, only asking me about me and my wife's chart, so precious things they told, so that I don't forget. And I was really very surprised and suddenly awake of something. I will tell one of them if we have time. Do we have some
Absolutely.
time? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my wife's chart, she has Leo rising with the sun in the 9th house in Aries. So Diana was also a student of Robert Zoller. So she was very good in medieval astrology as well. She was assisting to Robert Zoller. And she asked me about my wife's chart. And I told her that the ruler of the ascendant is in the 9th house. And she said, "Oh, it is good for you," to me. I said, I was surprised a bit. Why it's good for me? Because this is the ruler of the ascendant, in the case, the native. So this is the indicator of my wife. Why you say this is good for me? She said, because in any chart, the sun indicates a female's husband, or the most important male figure in his chart. So the sun in the 9th house, indicator of you in her chart. And the sun is exalted, very close to 19 degree, because the sun is 18 something degree in her chart. And that means you will be a man who will be exalted from 9th house matters. I was very surprised.
And it's
And
very true.
that is, thank you, actually. Yeah, I'm not saying it for myself, but I was so surprised because before that, I was not thinking that, because this is the ruler of the ascendant and the sun, why should I use it for myself. It was interesting. And another shocking thing, actually, I don't have my chart. I wish I could show it. But I have Jupiter in the ninth in Gemini, squared by Saturn, which is placed in the sixth house, which is the ruler of the fourth house. And only asking and learning about this, Rob Zoller, asked me, did your father blocked your sister's marriage because of religious problems? It was really very true. I was so surprised when I learned this. How can he know this?
Wow.
And the chart was not there, by the way, only asking something. I said, wow, how do you know that? Why? Because the sun, the Saturn, as the ruler of the fourth, was indicator of my father. Another difference of medieval astrology from our modern day astrology. The fourth house is the father, not the mother. And he was very right. By the way, I have Capricorn in the cusp of the fourth house, Saturn placed in 16 degree of Pisces in my chart. And this is true exactly for my father, because in my father's chart, the sun of his chart falls to 16 degree of Pisces. So it was very true. He was my father. Oh, thanks God, I learned the truth. And I was very, interested with this. I was very surprised and I was amazed. So
This is such an incredible story, and thank you for sharing. But it speaks to your point before about obviously our modern take. If we take your wife's example, Leo
mhm,
rising, exalted sun in the ninth. Yes, it can talk about maybe her work and astrology, etc. But the fact with these medieval techniques, you're finding other people in the life of the native, not just speaking about the native's life alone, which there's a remarkable story you're sharing.
exactly, exactly. Thank you very much for reminding it. And Jupiter, as the ruler of the third house in my chart, falls to the ninth house in Gemini, and Jupiter rules the third, Sag. And when you uh, drive the houses, that means Jupiter is in the seventh from the third and squared by Saturn, which is the ruler of the fourth. So father blocked square. My sister's marriage from the third, Jupiter falls to the seventh. So, and because of the religious differences, Jupiter in the ninth and blocked by Saturn. So I said to
Wow.
myself, I did so well to get the courses of Robert Zoller. I was really very amazed. Before that, I had some information about traditional astrology, medieval astrology, but not so far. And in my background, I used to be familiar with the modern techniques. But then I said to myself, okay, this is the right direction. I had to turn my face to medieval astrology techniques. So this is why I'm here to share my medieval astrology information.
Such an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, just to reiterate how much information you can get from these techniques. And to your point before about, combining the ancient wisdom with our modern sense and our modern concepts and combining, and not only combining that, you talk about combining house systems and looking at multiple areas in the chart, which is absolutely remarkable. And of course, at Kepler College, we're really excited to have a new medieval certificate starting with your wonderful self. We've got Shu, we've got Anthony Lewis. Forgive me if I'm forgetting somebody else. All coming together for this.
Ehsan Kazani, yes, from Iran.
Yeah, thank you for this medieval certificate together. And you'll be talking more specifically about your course. It's coming up on June 27th, and that is called Determinating Significators Through Medieval Astrology. Any more information you'd like to give specifically about that class for students?
Actually, I would suggest to attend this class to enlarge the view of not only a chart, view of life. This is true, actually. So this was what I would suggest. I have some books on it. Maybe some are familiar about these books, but I would say learn medieval astrology and you will be amazed.
Absolutely wonderful. And of course, this is part of the medieval certificate starting at Kepler College. So, Öner, again, thank you so much. My gratitude to you again for coming on. You helped me start this series many moons ago, and I'm very grateful for your graciousness and giving your time, your wisdom and expertise in these matters.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Goodbye.